any sense from Putin that he would be willing or open to the idea of ending this war without taking significant property from Ukraine?
Well, he's going to take something. I mean, they fought, and he has a lot of property. I mean, he's won certain property. If you say that, he's won certain property. We're the only nation that goes in and wins a war and then leaves, like we did under President Bush in the Middle East. We go in, we blast the hell out of everybody, destroy the place, and then we leave, Remember, I used to say, keep the oil. But I really didn't say, I said two things. I said, don't go in. But then they went in. And I said, well, don't go in, but if you're going to go in, keep the oil. But we didn't keep the oil. What do? We go in, we blast it to pieces, and then we leave, Doesn't make sense, never made sense.
That was Trump this morning. Our fatal mistake, ladies and gentlemen, was not going into Iraq and Afghanistan. It was just not looting them before we left. But welcome, guys, to another Sunday night live stream. Kind of a short one this week, I think, is frankly, not a whole lot has really changed all that much since our stream last week. We had a show last week talking about the shutdown, and the government is still shut down. I made a bold prediction last week that the ceasefire in Gaza would not hold, and lo and behold, I can't believe it, but I was right. The ceasefire has broken down. Imagine my shock at that. Who would have thought that a ceasefire in Gaza would not have lasted? And of course, the big news this week was the meeting between Trump and Zelensky, which was undercut a bit by a phone call between Trump and Putin. So we will talk a little bit about that. And in general, I thought I was having a chat with somebody, and we were talking about some of these things, and this person made the point that, I'm always talking about foreign policy stuff. What about America first? And that's an interesting question because, I do consider myself America first, and here I am talking about all this foreign policy stuff. Well, first of all, because Trump is always talking about foreign policy stuff. Where is he on some of these domestic issues? We'll talk about that. But more fundamentally, there is this question: what is America first? Because Trump really changed the Republican Party when he campaigned on America first. And how did the neocon establishment react to that? Well, by flipping the script, as they say, and saying, oh, actually, being a neocon is America first, and wars are America first, and intervening in every other place in the world is America first. And so we'll get into that a little bit. So where do we start? This is kind of a disorganized week this time, folks. I apologize for that, but I guess maybe we start with this Russia stuff. This was a post that so I'm sure you guys follow the news at least a little bit. So you know what happened. Zelensky came to the White House, supposed to be this triumphant meeting where Zelensky was going to get the Tomahawk missiles with which to strike deep inside Russia, to strike into Moscow and force the Russians to the negotiating table. And then before that, about a day before that, Trump suddenly has a phone call with none other than Vladimir Putin, and they apparently had a bit of a heart-to-heart about tomahawks. Yeah, Aaron Sarad says, America first is whatever Trump says it is. Well, yeah, right, exactly. Whatever Trump says it is, and boy, whatever Trump says could mean a lot of things from one day to the next. So anyway, so by all accounts, this meeting with Zelensky did not go well for Zelensky, and which is a good thing, because as we've talked about, giving Ukraine Tomahawk missiles, which is weird. I thought we were selling them to them. The funny thing about Tomahawk missiles, I mean, and by the way, they are a top of the line, fantastic missile system for the 1980s. But the funny thing about them is they have to be fired by American personnel. You can't just give a Tomahawk missile system to a foreign country. There's all kinds of proprietary technology and target location and things that you can't do without American intelligence. So, and the Russians all knew this. So the point that they made was, if you give the Ukrainians Tomahawks, as you call it, give them Tomahawks, and they attack Russia, that means you're attacking Russia. Period. Paragraph. We're not gonna allow that. That will be a red line. Anyway, so Trump comes back and tells Zelensky, look, and he puts it nicely, we can't afford them. We can't afford to give you them. We need them ourselves, which is also true, by the way. A convenient excuse to not just say, no, we're not going to give it to you because we're not going to attack Russia with them. We're not going to start World War III on your behalf, Zelensky. But even still, yeah, point taken also, we do want to have our own missiles because this war has drained our military assets in a huge way over the past 4 years. We do not have the supply of artillery shells we used to have. We do not have the supply of Patriot missiles we used to have. And of course, other things too. That skirmish we had over in between Israel and Iran, they say in 12 days we went through 20% of our entire supply of THAAD missiles. These are theater high altitude air defense missiles. There is this concept in the world known as limits of resources, and we are not made of money. We are not made of weapons, and we can't just fund the war forever. And then the other strange outcome of this meeting, besides that it didn't go well for Zelensky, although Trump did not, he never entirely shuts the door. This is Trump's way. He never just completely shuts the door on anything. So he still says, maybe we'll supply time sometime in the future, maybe, perhaps, who knows. But then he says, I've agreed to meet with Putin in Hungary in a couple of weeks, which apparently they did not actually agree to that. But then the Russians said, yeah, okay, sure, fine. We'll meet in Hungary. Interesting choice, by the way, because Hungary is not an easy place for the Russians to get to. They're kind of surrounded by these European countries. So I'm sure they'll be able to work that out somehow. Probably coming up through like Greece and then Serbia or something. But even still, Hungary, you've got Poland right next to it. You got Romania there. Like, these are not countries that are friendly to Russia. And then, of course, all the EU countries. But anyway, so that means in a couple of weeks, when who knows what will happen there. Zelensky says he wants to come. I would be shocked if Viktor Orban, the president of Hungary, is going to allow Zelensky to come, because Hungary and Ukraine have been like almost at war over their gas pipelines for the last several months. But we'll see. But either way, the point being, another 2 weeks, Trump has bought himself. Another 2 weeks. Trump is like the master of this. 2 more weeks. Just give us 2 more weeks kind of stuff. As though things haven't happened in over the past year. This started with, we had the Anchorage meeting in, when was that, July? Or was it August? I think it was August. 2 more months have gone by. And this has not been a stalemate, contrary to what the media says. It has been Russia defeating Ukraine on the battlefield all over the place, and now almost completely taking one of their last major fortified cities, Pokrovsk. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But Trump posted this onto Truth Social. Here's what Trump wrote. And here's what he said. He says, the meeting, let me make this bigger. The meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine was very interesting and cordial, but I told him, as I likewise strongly suggested to President Putin, that it is time to stop the killing and make a deal. Enough blood has been shed, with property lines being defined by war and guts. They should stop where they are, kind of like a ceasefire, I think is what that sounds like. Let both claim victory. Let history decide. No more shooting, no more death, no more vast and unsustainable sums of money spent. This is a war that never would have started if I were president. I was going to say that. Thousands of people being slaughtered each and every week. No more. Go home to your families in peace. Well, that sounds perfectly reasonable. However, there is a little bit of a problem with this. And in fact, the second in command in Russia, not technically, but Dmitry Medvedev is the vice chair of the Security Council. This is how Medvedev summed up this this comment. Here's what he said. Again, this is Russia. During his meeting with the tearful beggar, meaning Zelensky, Trump said something obvious yet interesting. Let Russia and Ukraine both declare themselves winners. And there it is right there. That kind of compromise sometimes happens after wars, but not in this one. It's not just that Russia seeks victory on clearly defined terms. That's a given. The problem is that the Banderite clique in Kiev, that means the Nazi regime, because they are Nazis. Zelensky himself is not Nazi, but all the people behind him are. They are Banderites. Anyway, the Banderite clique in Kiev can never be seen as victorious at home under any circumstances. The drugged up ghoul, meaning Zelensky, and his cronies know this perfectly well. And here's the point. Losing territory will never be forgiven. Right? And that's the heart of it right there. There are these territories, Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson, which have had elections and all voted to secede to Russia. Well, they're going to be Russian or Ukrainian, and they ain't going to be Ukrainian. So how is Ukraine going to declare a victory having lost 4 territories, plus Crimea is long gone? Losing territory will never be forgiven, not by the rabid nationalists, nor by political rivals. For them, the end of the war means the end of the regime. This is Medvedev. That's why Trump's formula does not apply here. Still, the self-proclaimed peacemaker, this is Medvedev, the self-proclaimed peacemaker, meaning Trump, played his, quote, tomahawk diplomacy card well, stirring global opinion in his usual style. He wrapped it up in classic fashion, hinting at the dispatch of nuclear submarines before jokingly admitting, sorry, brother, we need them ourselves. To his credit, Trump remains firm in his stance. It's not my war. The senile fool is to blame. However, even the senile fool was against sending long-range weapons to the Banderites. But of course, this won't stop the ongoing flow of new arms to Kiev. The story isn't over, and we must be ready for whatever comes next, says Medvedev. So what the Russians are basically saying is, yeah, we are willing to negotiate, but these are our terms, and we are not willing to compromise on our land. So what is Trump going out and saying? Well, we just heard in that clip with Maria Bartiromo this morning. He says the Russians can have some land. And he suggests they'll have land at the contact line, which would also be problematic because in addition to the 4 territories, they also have the front line is also in some places passed into Ukraine, into places that are not currently considered part of Russia by anybody, including in Sumy and Dnipropetrovsk. These are Ukrainian territories that Russia is currently occupying. So if the battle lines are frozen, if the line is drawn here, Ukraine loses even more land. But the Russians have always said, we are going to take all of the 4 territories. We're going to kick all the Ukrainians out. And that has been their position since before Trump took office. So there will be this meeting in Hungary in a couple of weeks, probably. And what's going to happen then? There is no way that that Trump gets out of this mess, other than to do the obvious thing he should have done from day one, which is to just walk away. This was Biden's war. Wouldn't have happened under my watch. Not my problem. We're not doing anything more with this. But he just can't bring himself to do it. And instead, we get things like this. Here is J.D. Vance. This was, I think, a couple of days ago. Here's J.D. Vance. Let me play this clip for you here.
I'd say this in the Russia. I think there's a fundamental misalignment of expectations. I'd say this in the Russia-Ukraine war, where the Russians tend to think that they're doing better on the battlefield than they actually are. And I think that's made it harder to strike a deal in these last couple of months, even though, again, we've made progress. I do think we're going to get to a deal, but we just got a little bit further to go. I think there's a
the Russians don't know how well they're doing. They don't know how badly they're actually doing on the battlefield, is what J.D. Vance says. Couldn't possibly be that we don't understand how well they're doing on the battlefield. Couldn't possibly believe that our intelligence agencies are laundering claims from Ukraine about how well Ukraine is doing. Couldn't possibly be that. So again, there's no two ways out of this. Either Ukraine capitulates or they lose militarily. And either way, Trump is going to get blamed for this. So why are they still doing this? And it comes back to, I guess, the topic of this show. What is America first? Well, when Trump just got elected, I think we kind of understood what America first meant like stop caring about Ukraine, stop caring about foreign countries. And in fact, of course, America first did not start in his second term. What did Trump campaign on America first when he first ran for office in 2015-16? Stop caring about other countries. Stop. Get us out of Afghanistan. Get us out of Iraq. Stop nation building. Remember that term? That was America First meant America has problems. Let's stop trying to help other countries in the world and let's focus on our own. We are now another week into the shutdown. I talked about this last week. My prediction then was that sooner or later, the Republicans are going to capitulate. So, in the next week to come in front of us, more things start to dry up financially, including military pay and also, by the way, welfare checks. Now, I for one, don't care that the welfare system is going to come to a grinding halt. But I can still guarantee you there will be political consequences for Republicans. And it comes down to, again, the question we talked about last week. Which side's is gonna break first, the Democrats or the Republicans? My money is on Republicans because they always do. And of course, they have an out that they're not taking to just end the filibuster. And again, I hate to retread stuff we talked about last week, but Republicans have a majority in the House and the Senate, and the Democrats have promised they're going to end the filibuster when they take power anyway. So we are, by keeping the filibuster going, we are only allowing the Democrats to stop Republicans from acting. That's all. Until someday when the Democrats need it out of the way, they will take it out of the way all by themselves. So why not just do it? Because what's going to happen in 2 weeks from now if there's the shutdown still going? And Social Security checks aren't going out. And welfare checks aren't going out. And Medicare checks aren't going out. And troop pay is not going out. What then, Republicans? What's more important to you, Republicans? The filibuster? Or giving the Democrats the budget they want? And remember, folks, the budget for years now has just been extended by continuing resolution. The budget they could just vote to extend is a Biden-era budget from when Biden, Pelosi, and Schumer were in charge. And even that, the Democrats say, is not good enough for them anymore because some of it is expiring, including parts that include welfare for illegal aliens. So Democrats have shut down the government over welfare for illegal aliens. How much longer are Republicans going to allow that to go on? When they can choose not to. And again, who would be the man to put that message out there? There's one man in America who, when he speaks, the whole world listens. And that's Donald J. Trump. And Trump is on Maria Bartiromo on Fox News Sunday, and he's not talking about the shutdown. He's talking about Russia and Ukraine, and Israel and Gaza. That wonderful historic peace deal that fell through just like all the rest of them did. Oh, I'm sorry. That wonderful peace deal he had between the nation he could not pronounce and the nation he forgot which one it was. Remember that? Remember that, folks? So here's a reminder.
To think that we settled Azerbaijan and Albania as an example. It was going on for years. It was never going to be settled. If you remember, the prime minister and the presidents, they were there for many years. They said, when they were in my office, we settled. And they started off at both sides of the Oval Office, so far away.
And he didn't just misspeak himself that one time, because he said that at least twice in two different occasions on 2 different days. Azerbaijan and Albania. Yeah. And in case you don't know, it's Azerbaijan and Armenia that Trump struck this historic peace deal with, supposedly. But anyway, so all this foreign policy stuff. Here's the thing about this foreign policy stuff. It's not just Ukraine. It's also Venezuela and Colombia and India. By the way, speaking of India, well, no, let me make my first point first. The reason why this foreign policy stuff is important is not just because, although it is also because Trump is fixated on it, but because all this stuff comes right back to us. I care about what happens in Gaza because our taxpayer dollars are paying for it. I care about what happens in Ukraine, not because I care about Ukrainian lives. Although, as a matter of fact, when you look at thousands of photos of Ukrainian corpses, you do start to care a little bit when you see what your tax dollars pay for. That does actually matter. I mean, they might not be Americans. They are my fellow human beings, though. And seeing a million of them blown to bits is pretty disgusting. But besides that, these do have consequences for the American people. We are now in a trade war with China. That is going to cost Americans a lot of money. Who do you think pays tariffs? By the way, here's an incredible statement from Scott Bessent. Hold on, let me put this on the screen real quick. Hold on. And if you guys saw this one, this is Scott Bessent. He's asked about tariffs and saying, aren't tariffs taxes? Here's what he says. Here's what Scott Bessent says. This is the Treasury Secretary, ladies and gentlemen. Watch this.
Are the president's tariffs not taxes on imported goods?
That's easy, because tariffs are a surcharge, not a tax. They could be paid by the exporter. They could be paid by the country. When you go and get your driver's license, you pay a fee. Is that a tax?
See that smirk on his face? When you pay for your driver's license, is that a tax? Yes, that's a tax, you idiot. Of course it's a tax. Oh, you just have to pay the money? You just have to pay the money to the government as a condition of being a self-respecting American? You just have to pay the government for the privilege of being able to use our roads? Of course that's a tax. It's a tax by another name. It is a tax. And no, exporters don't pay tariffs. Importers pay tariffs. It's just mind-boggling. This is the Treasury Secretary of the United States. Is a tariff a tax? Don't be ridiculous. Of course it's a tax. Good Lord. Good Lord. So yeah, these are things that have consequences for the American people. So what is America First? America First means every single thing that we do is through the lens of, how does this make America better? How does a trade war with China make America better? And the answer is, it doesn't. How does a war with Russia make America better? The answer is, it doesn't. Now, in the egos of people like Joe Biden, it made sense because their plan was to destroy Russia and then loot the place. That was their plan. Just like when Trump says, we're going to invade Iraq and then take the oil. That was the plan for Russia. Take their rare earths, subjugate them, crush them. That was the plan they were talking about in 2022 in Ramstein. We're going to impose bone-crushing sanctions, as Lindsey Graham said. We're going to show the Russians with our military might, and they're going to overthrow their government, and yada yada. And all of that fell apart. All of it failed. And now, the whole world is getting angrier and angrier with us and organizing against us. And that is directly bad for the American people. So, yeah, on one hand, America First meant, don't support this neo-colonial stuff like, trying to bring democracy to the Middle East. On the other hand, these were all just talking points. This wasn't the actual idea was, we're gonna destroy Iran, then we'll destroy Russia, then we'll destroy China. Well, how's that worked out? And it hasn't. So going back to Aaron's comment here, which is according to Trump, America First is whatever Trump says it is. Well, here's what happened this week. And one of the things that happened this week. So Trump came out this week and he says, I had a call with India, with the Prime Minister of India, with Modi. And he says that they have agreed to stop buying Russian oil. And then the White House comes out and says, we've also, by the way, confirmed that India has now stopped buying half of the oil that they've been buying from Russia. And then India comes back and says, not only did Modi never say this to Trump, there was no phone call. This never happened. And then some people in the news media started calling the oil producer or the oil importers in India, said, have you stopped buying Russian oil? They said, no, what are you talking about? They are just making stuff up as they go. Historic peace deals. Trump says this week, he says, we've gone against BRICS and everybody is now leaving the BRICS. Not one country has left the BRICS. BRICS is this trade bloc between Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and several other countries have now joined additionally. And this pattern just goes on and on of 2 more weeks. We've gotten all these great things done. And meanwhile, it all just keeps grinding on. There's no stalemate between Russia and Ukraine that's happening right now. Russia is winning the war. And if Trump does not extricate himself from it, he is going to be blamed. That is what they're waiting for. So I don't know what more to say, folks. I've got some good news. John Bolton's been indicted. And contrary to the lies of the media, I saw the Washington Post say he's the third official targeted by Trump's administration, when in actual fact, the Justice Department was investigating Bolton in the Biden administration. This did not start with Trump's administration. But either way, very good. Bolton's been indicted. And that's all very good. But in the greater, bigger narrative picture of things, it's been just another week. And like we used in the cold open, the video, or no, it's not the cold open. In the thumbnail, we had the meme Trump posted where he was flying a fighter bomber in wearing a crown on his head and dumping poop onto protesters. It's all very funny. There's definitely that. There's an element of Trump you gotta love. But his time is limited. We are now 9 months into his presidential term. So a fifth of his term is now gone. And this is just it. At what point are we going to start, making America great again? Like, that's what we voted for. And instead, it's just the same old quagmires. It's Russia. It's more war. I mean, that's the real thing about America First. What does America First really mean? What did it always mean? What did it originally mean? Trump didn't invent the term. It went back to the America First Party. What was their message? Don't get into World War II. Because it was a foreign intrigue happening overseas. And they, of course, lost the argument, and Americans went and fought in World War II, and they died in World War II. We ultimately won the war. Was it the decisive thing? I don't know. A lot more Russians died in World War II than Americans did. Chinese even. People don't remember that. How many millions of Chinese died fighting Japan? But America First was an anti-war message. And the reason why we don't have great things in this country is because of how much we have blown on our wars. And the military-industrial complex is a cancer on our country. Look at Russia. They are winning wars, spending a fraction of the money that we do. That's the thing about the military-industrial complex. Most of it is grift because there's absolutely no punishment for them. It is, remember what Eisenhower actually used to call it. We heard the term military-industrial complex. The term actually was military-industrial congressional complex. He dropped congressional from the speech because he didn't want to offend Congress too much. He had a few more things to get done. But the original term, look it up, was military-industrial congressional complex. Because what happens is these military companies, we give them billions and billions and billions of dollars. It's not enough. They run over their budget. They deliver garbage. But then they take some of that money and put it back into congressional campaigns. And so they get more. And as a result, we have the most overpriced military in the world. If you look at how we defend our national interests versus how Russia defends theirs and China defends theirs, China is now like the biggest shipbuilding power in the world, despite spending a fraction of what we spend on our military. It's embarrassing. We should be embarrassed to be losing in any way, shape, or form to a communist country. But Trump isn't calling out the military-industrial complex. He isn't calling out Congress. There's a shutdown happening now. And that's supposed to come to a head. And what's Trump talking about? Ukraine. At least he didn't give them the tomahawks. At least there's that. But we are a far cry from Trump just washing his hands of the matter. Or, even better, saying, hey, you know what? Maybe this whole Russia-Ukraine war thing was a bad idea in the first place. Maybe it was partly what Joe Biden was trying to do. Part of that whole Russiagate narrative. Remember that? They sabotaged Trump's entire first term in office over the lie that Russia had meddled in our elections and gin up this hatred of Russia. But he's not doing that. Well, maybe he should. Anyway, it's going to be a short show tonight. This time we have gone a half hour. I wish we had more to talk about, but frankly, not much more has happened. It's just been more of the same. It's very frustrating. Hopefully, we'll have better news next week, although I doubt it. We'll see. Oh, I do have one funny story for us tonight. I got an email from Christina Caramo. Remember her? We had a lot of great episodes talking about Christina Caramo. Well, she has just posted her first email blast in a long time. I was wondering what happened to Christina. I can't put this on the screen because it is in my email, but I will just read this off. It says, have you seen these episodes? And there's some thumbnails. The Caramo Report experienced a temporary hiatus due to a platform we depended on canceling us for unspecified reasons with no arbitration process. Lesson learned, depending on enemy technology is foolish. Watch these episodes. Now, I don't know, guys. I've been streaming for the past 4 years, 5 years almost. My God. And when we started, we were, of course, saying unpopular things that you couldn't say on YouTube about the lockdowns. That's why we also have been always streaming on Rumble. That's why we keep copies. We keep backups. I guess Christina didn't think of that. So anyway, har. Anyway, sad thing. Not a great week, folks. Hope you all are still staying healthy, though, and productive. And, of course, there is an election coming up. So maybe next week we'll talk more about that. Although, of course, it's all local stuff. There's no state elections, but there are some local elections. You probably have a tax increase on your ballot wherever you are. So make sure you get out about that. Patty says, what about this email from District 9 today saying people can't use the word Republican? I haven't seen that, Patty. I did not see that. If you want, you can forward it to me real quick. I'd love to see that. Although, well, I can imagine what it says because I've heard about this issue in the past where certain disruptors are claiming that they own the word Republican, which is retarded, but that's the way that goes. Yeah, District 9 is unfortunately a very, very big mess. Not so much local stuff and state stuff to talk about tonight. We will do a more state-focused stream maybe next week. Mark says, which people are they referring to? Mark, I assume what they're referring to is people like, I don't know, organizers of Republican clubs, for example. So we'll see. Oh, hold on. It's coming in right now. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Let's see. The District 9, unfortunately, is a disruptor-owned local Republican organization, which, frankly, in my opinion, the state party should be cracking down on some of these people because this just got out of hand. So here is the email. This is okay. I've gotten the email here, and it says "Empowering Patriots to Win." That's their logo, and it's the thumb area is the 9th District. And it's editorials by Lori Skibo, the disgraced former, I want to say, secretary of the Republican Party under Christina Caramo. And she says, in 2011, Monroe County faced a challenge, not on the campaign trail, but in the courtroom. An individual named Dean Hazel registered a nonprofit organization under the name Republican Party and began soliciting donations. In response, the Monroe County Republican Executive Committee filed suit to stop this unauthorized use of their name and symbols, which culminated in a Court of Appeals decision affirming a permanent injunction against Hazel. Yeah, Republican Party. Republican Party. That would be obviously confusing to people who would think the party is the actual party. Anyway, this is a long, rambling email. I'm not going to read this all the way through. But of course, the idea is, again, yeah, as we said, it was going to be an attack on groups that call themselves Republican clubs, as of course we have every right to. So, yeah, apparently District 9 is feeling the heat. Mark says nothing's on the ballot this year in Highland Park. Lucky you guys, because there's some things on the ballot in Washington County. We have 20 ballot proposals on our ballot this November 4th. So anyway, so there you go. All right, guys, that'll do it for us for tonight. We'll try to have something more to talk about next week. I'm sure there will be. Until then, thanks for all you guys do for liberty. Peace.